Classic Cinema with the Sage Sisters, viewers and listeners. This is episode number 10. Believe it or not, we've done 10 already. And today we're talking about You Can't Take It With You, which is a 1938 movie uh, directed by Frank Capra and starring Jimmy Stewart, Jean Arthur, Lionel Barrymore, and Edward Arnold, among other people.
Yes.
And uh, Spring Boyington is in it too. And it is just this wonderful story, which when I think that it was filmed in 1938, I'm like surprised. I'm surprised in a way because
Well, and it was
but
the
it's
play first, which was written before then.
yes, and but
Yeah.
it is kind of a Frank Capra theme to have
Yes.
these
Yes.
people who are not wealthy, have lots and lots of friends, and then in the end, that's their wealth is their friends, and then these really wealthy people who are unhappy and having indigestion, like
Right.
Edward Arnold's character has indigestion because he's doing something that he
Yeah. When
doesn't
someone says,
really
"You have
want.
ulcers," I do not have stomach ulcers.
I
Yeah, I
know.
think you have stomach ulcers.
Yeah, right, right. So, I I just love this movie, and it's a very similar theme to It's a Wonderful Life. The themes are similar,
Yes.
and so the let's set up the story.
Well,
Take it
I
away.
got the description.
Okay,
Here's the
good.
brief description. The son of a snobbish Wall Street banker becomes engaged to a woman from a good-natured but decidedly eccentric family, not realizing that his father is trying to force her family from their home for a real estate development. Now, that's pretty
Yes,
basic
yes,
because at the very beginning of the movie, it focuses on the banker.
right.
And he has this discussion with his staff that he just came from meeting with some Congress people.
Yes, he was came back from
And
Washington.
he came back from DC to discuss creating a monopoly.
Yes, and
And monopoly at this time,
it has to do with weapons and
yes,
weapon
at this
production.
time, it's monopoly on creating weapons of war to
Right,
make money off war.
right.
Because at the time, you're kind of they're entering, getting ready for World War II, so to speak.
Hmm.
And he's excited about that. He's excited the discussion is to eliminate this particular neighborhood where people have it's homes. It's
Right,
their business, it's their homes, it's this
right,
amazing part of a community. And he reveals to all his people that he owns it, and so he can kick them out anytime he wants.
right.
And there's this one particular family that it says here that um, Jean Arthur is the daughter of this family, this one particular family who's very eccentric. Jimmy Stewart has just been made vice president of his father's banking and Wall Street banking company firm, I should say. And Jean Arthur is Jimmy Stewart's secretary, and he falls in love with
Right,
her.
right,
And he has yet to meet her family. He just knows he adores her.
right.
And so you got these two things going on without the son realizing what his dad wants to
Is
do
doing,
to,
yeah,
to buy all these people out so he can create
the factories.
the factory to manufacture weapons,
Right.
make them wealthier and have a monopoly. They want to get in on it first
Yeah.
to have the monopoly on all of this
Which
type of
they
thing.
never mention in the movie, but I think they're paying attention to the rumblings over in Europe,
Yes,
and
they don't
that's
mention it, which is very interesting
which
because
is why they want to build the
he's obviously aware of that and
right,
obviously becomes more aware of it when he goes to Washington, D.C.
right,
and
exactly.
and he learns this. So they're all, ooh, we get to make more money and not in any way concerned that they're going to be creating weapons of destruction.
Right. Yeah,
They just
or
want to make
dumping people out of their homes.
or
And the
dumping
thing
people out of their homes. Right. They
and the
don't
thing
care
that
about any of it.
Yeah, and I think the thing that I love is this house that Lionel Barrymore's the grandfather. They're the Sycamore family.
Yeah,
And they he owns the house. It's huge. It's a huge house.
yeah,
And another one of the very first scenes I just love. It shows kind of how the people come to live in their house. He is at this real estate place. The agent who has been told by Edward Arnold's character, Kirby is his last name. And so Lionel Barrymore has been got a letter to come talk to the real estate guy.
yeah,
Well, the real estate guy is because he's the only one of the all the blocks that they've bought who's holding out. He's not going to sell his house.
right.
And they have to have that property if they're going to build
Yeah, and
the
if he sells out, everybody else is forced to leave.
right. But the real estate guy says make him sit out there. Well, that was a big mistake because what because here's this guy furiously um doing the figures and putting them into this machine so that to make sure that the
Right,
figures there match the figures here, match the figures over there.
right.
It's this really stupid task that he's doing. And and grandpa goes over and he says, "Do you like what you're doing?" And the guy goes, "What are you talking about?" "No, I don't like it." "Well, isn't there something that you do like?" And so he pulls out this little thing that looks like a lettuce,
Yeah,
a bunch of lettuce with a rabbit in between
okay.
that comes out. It's so cute. And everybody comes around and look, "Oh, that's so
Oh my
cute."
gosh, right,
And the guy comes out because he can't figure out why they haven't brought grandpa in finally.
right,
And Grandpa says, "Oh, well, he invites Mr. Poppins, I think is his name, to
right.
come to their house, and
Just why don't you come stay with us so you can create your things?
yeah,
Yeah.
right.
I
Well,
mean,
and
and
come to
that's
find
what
out
they
there,
cultivate. They
yes,
cultivate creativity.
and they also happen to uh, pick up people along the way to come live at
Yeah,
their house
yeah,
because there's already one of their daughters has married somebody who did that.
yeah.
He came and never left, and there's somebody, Mr. DePina, who did the same
Poppins.
thing.
Yes. It seems to me, Mr. Poppins, that this is the kind of work you ought to be doing.
Someday I'm going to do nothing else. Someday, when my ship comes in.
How'd you like to come over to our house and work on your gadgets?
Over.
Yep.
He came and never left,
Never left.
and
And there's always music being played, and the one daughter is always dancing around the house,
yes,
dancing, dancing, and their mother, Spring Byington, is always sitting at the typewriter typing. She's writing plays. And then, of course, you find out later the reason why she used to be a painter.
right,
She decided she wanted to write plays because the typewriter happened to be delivered to the wrong house. And she saw the typewriter and got inspired and decided she had to write plays. I mean, it's just they just go with
with the
where it
flow.
takes them.
Yes. Now, something else that two things that I learned. One was Ann Miller, who's the sister who dances all the time.
Yes.
She was not a dancer. She was 15 years old when she made
Yeah.
this movie.
Yeah, she danced, but she was not a ballet dancer. And they had her
Right.
doing ballet all the
And
time.
she was
And she
wearing those
lied about her age to be in the movie.
and not only that, but her feet were injured because she was on those toe shoes all the time.
Well, they weren't even the proper ballet toe shoes. They just gave her
Oh,
shoes.
oh
So they
dear.
had her being on her toes all the time and they were killing her feet. But she
Yes.
never said one word because she enjoyed being a part of this process of the
Mm-hmm.
filming of this. It was her first film,
Yeah.
50 years old. And of course, I said to Jamie, I said, she's only 15 in this. And he goes, she
I know.
looks older than 15.
I know.
I
Yeah.
said, yes, she does.
Now
But
the
she did such an amazing job playing a woman who was supposed to be married and,
yeah, yeah,
lived a life. And she did
yeah.
an amazing job.
The other thing that I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but Jean Arthur's character what is her name? She and Jimmy Stewart are going out on a date and they're in the taxi, or maybe they're in
Alice.
his
She's Alice.
Alice, that's it. Yeah, and he's Tony. And she's trying to explain about her family. And one
Yeah.
of the things she says is her grandfather was an expert on stamps. He loved stamp collecting. And so
Yep.
sometimes he would get paid to verify the
Right.
the uh the stamps and how much
Yeah.
they cost,
Well, I
what
mean,
the value.
he explains to me he was a businessman.
Uh-huh.
He had a business. He was doing the corporate thing. He was doing the whole make
Wall
the
Street. He
money and go
worked on
home.
Wall Street.
And
Mhm.
she said the story. She said, but he tells the story of how one day he got in an elevator and went,
I don't want to do this
I'm
anymore.
not happy.
Yeah,
I don't want to do this anymore. And he walked away from it all
right.
because he wanted to have
Which
joy.
he also repeats that story
He does.
to Kirby
For
when
Kirby.
they get put in jail together, which is so funny. Yeah, so when when Jimmy Stewart, while they're on that date, tells this really interesting story that I never really made the connection before, but he's telling the story to Alice about how he and his friend Bob Smith in college
Yeah.
wanted to study how grass changed the
Yeah.
sunlight into energy because they wanted to make
Right.
something that would be, they were describing solar panels. He
Of
was
course.
describing
They were.
solar panels
I
in
thought that was so fair. I'm
1930.
like, oh my God, I forgot that he had talked about that.
Yes,
A
he,
very environmentally
yes.
developing,
Oh,
I'm like, wow. Look
yeah,
how long that stuff has been around and how long it got poo-pooed.
I know.
It
And so
doesn't give
you,
your time.
so right off the bat, you see that Jimmy Stewart's desire for what he wants to do with his life is completely
Yeah.
opposite to what his father wants him to
Well, and his
do.
father wants to cultivate him into the banking, into
Yeah,
this whole manufacturing and
because it's a family business.
because it's a family, like he said to her, you know, we've done nothing but this. Our whole family history is this.
Yeah.
Well, we thought if we could find the secret of all those millions of little engines in this green stuff, we can make big ones. And then we could take all the power we could ever need right from the sun's rays, you see?
Yes. Right.
This is what we do. And I've never wanted to be a part of that, but I don't know how to say no to it.
Right.
I
But
don't know
once,
how to go, but I don't want this. And that's why I think part of why he's so attracted to her, because
right.
he feels her freedom of
Yes.
spirit. He
Yeah, and
feels her
so
freedom spirit.
he gives in to her desire to have the two families meet,
Yes.
but he does it on a wrong night.
Yes, she says, okay, it's going to be this. Your family has to know my family,
Right.
because I have been around where I see your mother and how she looks down at me. She's looking down at her nose at me and she says, I'm not going to get into this marriage
Mhm.
because he's proposed. She says, until your family, I know your family's going to approve of me and my family.
Right.
That's her terms,
Yes.
which is a sad term, really.
Yeah.
Because she is learned her whole life to live joy, but she's about ready to cut off her own joy if she's not accepted by people who don't have joy.
Right.
You know,
And
so
who
that's
yeah.
the interesting thing of layer that gets put in this story.
That is, yes. So I love it that they show up on the wrong night. And of course, uh, Ellie is dancing and her husband's playing the
Oh yeah, the house
xylophone
is
and
in disarray.
yeah,
All sorts of
right.
things are going on.
And
There's
the father and Mr. DePina and Mr. Poppin are down in the basement creating fireworks because it's
fireworks.
going to be
And then
4th of
the
July
mother
is coming up.
decided to paint again. So she's painting this man who's posing like to be a discus thrower in this short Greek costume. And
Yeah.
it's hysterical. Jimmy Stewart, you find out, he brought them on the wrong night on
On
purpose
purpose.
because he didn't want her family to be put on a show.
Right.
He wanted them to be seen for who they really are.
Right. Exactly.
And
So fun.
and you get this feeling from his father that he really is just doing what he thinks he's supposed to do, is
Yeah.
make money,
Right.
make money, make money, make money.
Right.
And at first you get this impression that his parents are these really flat, cold, stuck-up people.
Right.
But they do, as Frank Capra always does, first of all, picked an amazing cast, but he sees the story for what it really is you get a very clear picture by just watching that they're not happy.
No.
His parents do not have joy. It's
No.
just so pragmatic and so straight-laced and so keeping up appearances.
Right.
And it's really
Exactly.
not fun, and Jimmy Stewart wants to break that.
Mm-hmm.
Wants to break that. He doesn't like it. He's trying to figure out how he can take it to the level of, because I think he feels that his parents don't have joy, and so he's going to challenge it. And he finds a way to challenge it, and he finds all these little ways. Like he brings Jean Arthur to the same restaurant his parents are at.
Yeah.
And he creates this whole thing where it's kind of this fiasco. And she's embarrassed. And he's like, whatever, it is what it is. Don't care what they
Right.
see.
Yeah. Right.
This is more of what I want. And then, then he gets them over to the house a day early. And it's chaotic.
It is, and I love that the police show up because
Oh yeah.
Ellie's husband loves to print, and they've been printing these flyers to put into the Love Dreams. She creates
Right.
these candies and they sell them,
Right.
and he's been putting these things in there, and it's really supposed to be advertisements for the fireworks for the 4th
Yeah.
of July.
Yeah.
But it makes it sound like it's communist or something.
Yes. Yes.
And so,
And they're so innocent about it. They're like, I know. And it's really Lionel Barrymore, the grandfather, who figures out, wait a minute, no, he's just an innocent kid. He's just printing
yeah,
this stuff up. He doesn't understand what you're trying to tell him that you think it is.
yeah, right, yeah,
And of course, Jimmy Stewart and his parents are there. Jean Arthur at this point has, Alice has figured out he did this on purpose, and she's pretty upset with him. And she's mortified,
yeah.
because it's this chaotic, and then the police come in and this whole thing, right? And of course, carted off to jail.
But I love though the reason they're gonna cart him off to jail. But part of the thing that happens is,
Oh yeah,
the police go down to the cellar to get whoever's in there, and they drag him up, and there's a pipe that is close to one of the fireworks, and Mr. DePinner keeps saying, "No, I have to go get my pipe because it's," and the police won't let him talk, and then of course the fireworks blow up.
yes, they blow up, and it causes a bit of. I mean, it's pretty dangerous what happens actually.
Yeah, it's a wonder the
So
house
of course
doesn't burn
they
down.
learn they have to be arrested because, well, that's illegal. You're creating these fireworks illegally, and they're like, but they're so full of, oh, okay, sorry. They just want to say sorry, and
Yeah.
well, sorry, you're gonna have to
But
go to jail. And you're gonna have to have your little court hearing.
And the
So,
conversation between, when Grandpa gets angry with Kirby, they're all in this drunk tank
all in
thing.
jail.
So there are all these
Yeah.
people,
And they've got the women separated from the men.
right? And finally, I love this scene where Grandpa says, you're gonna die and nobody's gonna show up because you're not gonna have any friends.
Maybe it'd stop you trying to be so desperate about making more money than you can ever use. You can't take it with you, Mr. Kirby. So what good is it? As near as I can see, the only thing you can take with you is the love of your friends.
Oh, why don't you go out and get yourself a pulpit somewhere?
Yeah, right.
And that theme is repeated more than once.
More than once.
And
And he talks about the corporate life and the desire to make more money and more money and more money. And he goes, where's your joy in that? Are you happy?
And
he says,
and you've got more.
Can't take that with you.
That's right. And there's
But
not
what you take with you is your joy.
right, and your friendships and your love.
Right.
Yeah. Right, yeah. Because
And you can see Kirby going,
what?
um,
The other thing that Grandpa and Mr. Kirby have in common is Mr. Kirby used to play the harmonica, and
so
Grandpa
does
loves to
Grandpa.
play the harmonica.
But
And
also
he had
too, it's interesting because they show in the jail cell, you know, the for the men's side, all the men, and they're not rich. I mean, they're not used to seeing this man who can pull out this very expensive cigar,
right.
and they're watching him with this fascination, and then he decides he doesn't want it and just tosses it, and they all jump on it because to
Yes.
them that is like, oh my God, I never get to have this, I gotta have this.
Yes.
So there's this huge contrast
Yeah.
in that cell, and also in the women's cell where they cannot say certain words about who the women are that they're in the cell with.
Right.
But they're looking at Mrs. Kirby and going, "Whoa, what is it you've done to get this fur?
Yeah.
How did you get that?" And she's just like, and
Uh-huh.
Jean Arthur's character, Alice, she's trying to protect her. No, 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 no. She's not what you think she is. Just leave her alone. And they're all like, well, okay, sweetheart, whatever. I mean, it's just so funny because both of them are appalled that they're behind bars
Right.
because our kind do not get put behind bars.
Right.
How
Right.
dare you do this to us? And where are these very expensive lawyers? When are they going to come get us
Yeah.
and get us
And
out of here and stop being amongst this muck? It's
right.
so
Yeah.
interesting. And of
Yeah.
course, then they get their afternoon in court, and the courtroom is filled with people that support,
Grandpa.
you know, the
The Vanderhoffs.
they support all of them.
Yeah.
They're like, yeah, oh, we're here. And then, there's this conversation that happens and the judge is talking to them. And, okay, well, I'm not gonna, whole, this copying thing that you were doing is not a big deal, but, you were creating fireworks illegally
Yeah.
and there's a fine for that. And they're all kind of like, I don't know if we can afford to pay that. And everyone in the room says, we'll pay it for you. We're going to pool our money together. And of course,
And it creates all this
Jimmy Stewart and his
chaos.
parents are watching this whole process
Right.
going, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And he's got 4 lawyers that are there. He doesn't deserve to be here and blah, 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 blah. And the judge
Right.
is fascinated by this whole process of
I know.
the whole, oh my God, the opposite ends of things and this contrast.
I
It's
love the
hysterical.
judge. I
I
love
do
the
too. I
judge.
always like that guy. He plays a lot of judges in class.
He always plays a fun character
He
too.
does. And he's
And
just so great because
yeah,
he kind of is enjoying watching this happen.
yes. And I love when the young woman brings the plate up with all the money that they've collected on it because there's
Oh,
been
yes.
chaos in the courtroom,
Yes.
and the judge is trying to tell him to, and then he just gives up and watches it. So when
Yeah.
she brings up the money, she says, "Is this enough?" And he says, "Oh, yes." And he takes I think it's a silver dollar out
Yeah.
of his and puts it on the tray. Oh, yeah, take it over to the clerk. That's
It's
fine.
all going to work out now. Yeah. You're
Yeah.
finally paid.
Yeah, but that is the turning point for Jean Arthur's character Alice. She realizes they are terrible snobs. And Jimmy
And she
Stewart,
doesn't and she doesn't want to be a part of it. I mean, she has this little
mm-mm,
speech about, basically, who do you think you are?
right. Yeah, and she's angry at Tony for not speaking up sooner. I mean,
Yeah.
eventually he does, but
It's,
it
oh,
wasn't
here
soon
you
enough for
are.
her.
And she wonders, are we even suited for each other? Where's your
Yes,
courage? Where's your soul?
right,
Who do you want to be? Why
right,
are you continuing to stay a part of all of this nastiness?
right,
And of course, at this point, their grandfather, who owns the property, has come to realize, and they all realize that their property needs to be sold so that this big business can be, this
Well,
manufacturing.
part of the reason why they decide that is because she goes away.
Oh yeah, she disappears. She
And
takes off. She's like, I need time away. I need some
Mhm.
quiet. And so,
But her
her
letters are
grandfather does this
heartbreaking.
process of, well, maybe we do need to just get out of here.
Yeah, her letters
She
are
seems
heartbreaking
happy
because
where she's at. Let's go there.
no, she's not happy. She's heartbroken that she's not with her
Well, but she
family.
says she's happy. So he's like, okay, well, we don't want to keep our family separated.
Right,
So, Alice seems to enjoy this part of Connecticut. Let's go.
right,
Let's just go be with her and have some peace.
right,
Which, of course, by now, if he sells this property, the entire neighborhood will be torn apart.
right.
And then as he decides to sell his property, which at this point, they're like, sorry, you waited too long. You're going to get less than what we first offered you. And he goes, I don't care.
Right.
I don't care, because he's heartbroken
Yeah.
for his granddaughter's process. And so he just
Right.
wants to run away and escape as well.
Right.
And then, of course, the entire neighborhood gets their letters. You have to vacate. You're out. The property's been sold. And they're devastated. Like,
They are.
why did you sell out? What happened?
But then in the meantime, we get to see again, Kirby's process. They're going to have
Right.
this big meeting to
Right.
consolidate all and he basically stole a business from someone who had been his friend.
Yeah.
And the guy comes in and just accuses him of stealing it, and you're going to die alone because you don't have any friends. I
Right.
know
And this man has
because
been devastated because of him taking his everything away from him.
yes,
He has
and
nothing.
he says, I know when I die, I'm not going to have any friends come to my funeral because I was on the same path you're on now.
And I'm going to fool you, Anthony, because I've suddenly realized that I haven't lost a thing, that I never gained one moment's happiness out of it. And I warn you, Anthony, and neither will you. In spite of your victories, you can't shut out every decent impulse and survive. You're top heavy with power right now, Anthony, but you're going to crack under it. You're bound to crack under it.
Now.
Right.
And so it's like stacking it up
Right.
little by little that Kirby is rethinking.
Well, and it's so interesting because as this man is telling his story, he's, got his colleagues with him.
Right.
And he walks out and they're all like, oh my God, isn't he ridiculous? So
Yes.
pathetic.
Yes.
Boo-hoo.
But then
And
the
you
phone
can
call
see Kirby
comes.
going, wait a minute.
Right.
It's not right.
And then the phone call
So
comes
they're
that the guy
supposed to
has
go to
died.
Yeah.
The-
And then he gets told before he goes to the shareholder meeting,
Mhm.
telling the whole, hey, we finally got the property. We're going to start building this. They won everything they wanted to do.
Mhm.
He gets this notification. Hey, this man that just talked to you, he died in the men's restroom. They say of a heart attack, but he knows better.
Mhm.
He knows why he died. And he's really going through that internal process.
Yeah.
And
then Tony comes in and says,
Tony comes
I'm
in.
quitting. I'm quitting. I'm not doing this anymore.
Because he's like, no, I'm going to make you president. He goes, I don't want it.
Yeah.
This isn't the life I want, Dad. And I don't.
I've tried to tell you
people.
before.
I've been trying to tell you, and you're not listening.
I don't want any part of this, Dad. I never did.
You can't do this after all the plans
Dad,
I've
if I
made
can
for
just
you.
make you understand this. I think this business is great. It's good for you because you like it. I don't. And I never will.
You're not listening.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And at first he thinks he's like, ha, ha, ha. Yeah, sure. Right, kid. And he's like, oh, I have already written my letter. It has been turned in. I'm leaving.
Right.
And that's what really hits him.
That's
oh my
the
God,
final straw.
I just lost my son.
Yeah.
Over my greed.
Right.
I don't want to lose my son over my greed.
Right.
And then, they're like, come on. We got to get to the meeting. Come on. They're all waiting. We can't keep holding them any longer. And there's the metaphor of getting on the elevator, riding up. The door opens to the conference room. Yay! They're all clapping for him. The entire room is clapping for him.
Yep.
He just looks up and he has the harmonica somehow
In his pocket.
And he looks at it and he's looking at them and he goes, we're going back down. And they're
Right.
like, what? And then he
Right.
goes to visit
Grandpa.
grandpa as
Yeah.
they're moving. Everything is
Right.
moving out. And they have a really amazing conversation of, I haven't had joy. This doesn't make me happy. I just lost my son.
Yeah.
My son's
At
leaving.
which, unbeknownst to him, Alice has come home and Tony is upstairs trying to convince her to listen to him and that
Well,
he's left his
right,
father and he wants to marry her. Yeah,
right.
so
And because she didn't know he was going to be there. She just knew her
right.
parents sold everything. Her
Yeah.
grandfather sold everything.
Yeah.
And she's coming home going, what did you do? Why are you doing this? And then
Right.
she sees Tony and he's like, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And then the grandfather and his dad start to play the harmonica.
Yeah.
And they start to realize, oh, a shift has happened. Because he
Yes.
tells them, I don't want you to sell your property. I don't want your property. I don't want to break up the neighborhood. This is not what
Yeah.
I thought I wanted this, but I don't want it anymore.
Right.
I
Well,
don't want to hurt people. I don't want to devastate people's lives.
right.
So I can have everything, you
Right.
know? And, don't we always hope that that's really what it can be in our stories?
Exactly. Yes.
Is that you can have that kind of expansion, because there are so many great moments in the story from beginning to end, because it's a 2-hour movie.
Yeah.
So
It's
there's a
over
lot
two
that
hours.
happens with the development of Jean
Yeah.
Arthur and, her family story. There's a development with Jimmy Stewart's
Tony.
parents and
Mm-hmm.
Tony's story. And
Mm-hmm.
the thing is, I saw, a user review that said, well, it's outdated. It's not outdated.
Mm-mm.
This story continues. We still have corporation greed. We have the government giving more to corporations and the deregulation and making sure, that the trickle down economics, it doesn't work. And we're seeing that right before our very eyes day to day,
Yeah,
and
exactly. That's
how the opulence isn't joy.
yeah. There's no joy at all in her parents. And in fact, at one point, uh Edward Arnold's character says to Jimmy Stewart, I wanted to marry a waitress, but unfortunately my father knocked that out. So you wonder how happy has their marriage been?
Right, right. Well, and I think the part of it that's really important too is how Jean Arthur Alice uh saves Jimmy Stewart,
Mm-hmm.
because he probably would have not married for love. He would have kept up the corporate image,
Yeah,
taking everything to make sure you have more.
yeah.
Um Obviously, he didn't really want that. He wanted to study solar power, you
Right.
know, and maybe now he will. Maybe he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
He did get to go find that joy. And
Yeah.
the thing is, the end of the story doesn't necessarily mean that his dad will stop being rich,
Right. Well, he does
but
say,
he's just gonna, I think he'll conduct it differently.
yeah, he'll back off of what he was
He'll
doing
he'll
and going,
include a bigger part of society in it.
right. Yeah, I think
Rather
so
than
too.
taking away to give himself more, maybe he'll give more to give everybody more.
Right.
Because isn't
Exactly.
that the point, as a functioning, healthy society, to make sure everybody is prosperous
Yeah.
and can afford education, afford a house, afford to buy cars, and to not keep
And
the small man down,
right.
you
And
know,
to have meaningful work
and have meaningful
that
life.
you like, that you like.
Right.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, because, and I also think we're going to start creating, I see this as our future, that we won't have to have 40-hour work weeks.
I know.
Other cultures and other countries are already starting to do a 3 to 4 day work week, and it works great.
Yeah.
It
Right.
works fantastic. As a matter
Yeah.
of fact, we're getting more done.
Yeah.
You know,
That's
so
what
the
Barry
way
did.
that cultivating a happier, joyous life creates in your private
Yeah.
life joy, and it creates joy in your work life.
And
That
in the
whole work-life
culture.
balance. And
In
the
the culture.
culture ends up
Yeah.
being joyous.
Yeah.
And
So
everybody gets to be, and that's the moral of this story.
yeah, so go watch this movie, see if you think we're right, that it
Right.
is very relevant for today. And our next movie is going to be Friendly Persuasion, which I just found out reading the trivia was Ronald Reagan's favorite movie.
Yes.
Believe it or
Well, I
not.
mean, isn't that interesting? You
Yeah.
know, how roles have just, I mean, our society is really evolving
Yeah, it
in
is.
such a great way. And it doesn't always feel good. And that's what this story is about too. You
Yeah,
know, your growth is not easy.
right.
It can be very difficult.
Yes. So I know you have an appointment, and so I'm going to end this here and we can say
Okay.
goodbye for now. Go
Bye.
make comments on
Yes,
our
please
YouTube
do.
channel, like it, and
All right.
yeah, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.